The latest snapshot of Minecraft introduces a really big feature in terms of data packs. This is a dialogue right here, and I defined this completely through a data pack, and I showed it to myself with a command. It can show a title, it can show text, it can even show these items right here, and it can show so much more. There's so much you can do with this, including forms. So today I'm going to show y'all how to do this yourself, how to define these through data packs, what they can be used for. These are game changers for server owners and map makers. I can't wait to get started. Let's go. To start off, we're going to go ahead and make sure we're on the latest version of Minecraft as of the time of recording. That's version 25W20A. Once you're on that version, you'll have access to the dialogues. And if you're on that version, it'll be a lot easier to do the next step, which is to create your data pack. You can use /datapack create, enter in your ID. I'll use test for mine. And then you can enter a description of your data pack. And it doesn't have to be very complicated. You can just use one word like test. So we can go ahead and press enter. And it'll create a new empty data pack with the name test or whatever you named it. So if we go over to our file explorer, we can see we've got our world folder right here. This is our save folder for our world. And right here, data packs test. And if we go inside, we'll see data, we'll see pack.empty-meta. This is just a completely normal data pack folder, except it doesn't have anything in it yet. And we're going to add a dialog to this. So the first thing we want to do is really easy. Create a new folder and we'll call it text. This is inside of our data thing. So we have data packs, test, data, test. And inside of there, inside of your namespace folder, you'll go ahead and create a new one called dialog. This is where we're going to store all of our dialogues. We'll fill this up by the end of the video, and we'll have quite a few dialogues in here. So I'm really excited. Let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to VS Code. Okay. I'm going to open the folder. Inside of our saves folder right here, I'm just going to go to data packs, test. I'm going to open this one. That way we can see our entire structure. We can see our pack.empty-meta in VS Code, our data test dialog that we created. And inside here, we'll just do new file, and we call first dialog.json. And in here is a JSON file that we're going to use to define our dialog. First thing in a JSON file is the curly brackets. Inside the curly brackets, we'll need our key type. And this will tell us the type of dialog that we want to use. As we can see here by my suggestion box, we've got quite a few to choose from, but I'll tell you the simplest one to use, and the one that we're going to use right now is Minecraft Notice. And Minecraft Notice is simple. All it does is display a single dialog box with a button at the bottom, and you can add whatever content you want into the middle. So for example, if I wanted to make our body is going to be a list. Every time the body is going to be a list. And the body is a list of body elements. Each body element here has a type. And the type, for example, is plain message. And then plain message has a few more parameters. For example, we've got contents. Hello, world. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. This should be almost functional. All we need is one more thing. Out here in our main object, we do need a title key. So I'm going to say it, my first dialog. Make sure we have a comma there. And voila, this is my first dialog right here. Let's go back to the game for a second here. And since this is an experimental feature, we actually have to completely save the world and then go back into it. And click I know what I'm doing. And now we can go ahead and type our magic command /dialog. And we'll see, based on the suggestions, dialog, show, pretty obvious. Select your name. And then we can go down. Minecraft has some built-in, but they don't have anything in them. Let's go to test first dialog. Press enter, and there we go. Here's my first dialog. It says hello world, and we've got an OK button down at the bottom. You'll also notice this yellow button here, and it says this is a custom screen, click here to learn more. We won't be able to get rid of this in our data pack because this is a safety feature implemented by Mojang to make sure nobody gets hurt by these screens. Right here, this is a custom screen. You can read this if you want to. It's pretty boring. But the cool thing is that we've got hello world right here, and it says OK at the bottom. Click OK, boom, we're gone. Anytime we want to go ahead and display the dialog, we can enter in the same command. Hello world, OK. And another cool thing we can do here, if we go to our operator utilities, grab ourselves a command block, we can enter that command into a command block. So if I said dialog show at A, maybe we want to show it to everybody in the world, right? Test first dialog. Okay, and then if I hit done, right there, button, click it. As soon as we click this button, it'll say hello world to everyone in the world, not just us. And another thing you'll notice is that when we press it, this button, if you can see through the screen, it stays pushed in. That's because the game is paused. The game does not run while the dialogue is open if you're in a single player world. Obviously, multiplayer worlds, the game always runs. But let's go ahead and click OK. And there's our first dialogue. Now back in VS Code, we're going to try out some more options. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to make this OK button here do some other different things. Maybe make it look different, whatnot. Maybe have it open a URL when you click on it, things like that. Okay, so go ahead, back to our VS Code. We've got this body here, and below the body field, we're going to make a new field in the main object called action. Action is going to be an array, and it's going to have a label. Label is a text component. So the simplest way to make a text component is the label text, right? Text. And then I'm just going to say close dialog. Or maybe I'll make it say custom text. And so now we've got this action button. This parameter is specific to Minecraft notice, okay? So if you used a different one of these, which we'll get to in a second, right? You might have a different label than action. You might have more labels than this, whatnot. It's all different depending on the notice, except for just a few things like title and body are always the same. So back in Minecraft, let's escape, save and quit, go back into our world. And right here, let's open up our dialog again. And as you can see right here, custom text. It used to just say, okay. Now it says custom text that we defined right over here inside VS Code, custom text. So that's pretty cool. But that's not all you can do with the buttons, because you can go ahead and add, you can go ahead and add, if you, under the label, if you add inside this action thing, tooltip. You can add a tooltip as a, as a text component, just like anything else. You can say text tooltip text exclamation mark. And now when we go back to Minecraft, save and reload, and we run our dialog, we can see custom text, but when we hover over it, it says tooltip text. And that's pretty neat because we can make this give additional context to the user whenever they're clicking it. Maybe this is a confirmation button and it says, make sure you've read the terms and conditions right before you click this button, because on a server, that's something that might happen, is maybe they list their terms and conditions in one of these, and then you have to click OK. But here's the thing, if you have terms and conditions, there has to be a way to redirect them. So if you wanted to go ahead and have another button down here, how would you go about doing that? Well, it's pretty simple. Over back in VS Code, we'll change it from Minecraft notice to Minecraft confirmation. And the confirmation will have two buttons at the bottom. And you'll notice that it says missing key yes up here. That's because action is not a thing on confirmation. They actually changed to yes and no. So if I click yes, type yes here, and I make another one named no. label my no button. So let's go ahead and back to Minecraft, save and reload. And if we go ahead and open up our dialog again, it'll say hello world. And down here we've got two buttons again, custom text with our tooltip text just like before, and then my no button. And this is pretty neat because we defined all of this through a data pack, and this doesn't even need a resource pack to go with it. All of this can be defined on the server for the players to see. So this is why it's really helpful for, server owners or map makers, because it's really easy to put these into the hands of players. And hey, if you made it this far in the video, please don't forget to leave a like if you're enjoying it so far. And if you want to see more stuff like this in the future, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new videos. Okay, so one last thing with these simple buttons here. This is going to be our last exploration of buttons for now, because I know you're probably tired of buttons. But we've got one thing we can do, which is add lots of buttons. And if we change this from confirmation to Minecraft multi-action, and we go ahead and save, we'll see we're missing the key actions, okay? And the reason we're missing the key actions is because now we have a new key called actions. You could have guessed that probably. But if we define this key, it actually takes a list here. And that's because we can add as many of these as we want. So let's go ahead and move this into there. Let's go ahead and move the no button into there. Okay, and we'll delete all that, right? And let's go ahead and define another one. We'll say label another cool button. And for this one, we're actually going to make it do one more thing. We're going to say on click, and we're going to define a click action. So this is going to be action. And we're going to set this to, for example, run command. And this will run the command that we put here. So if we type in, for example, teleport the current player to maybe their current location plus maybe 15. Okay, and we'll save that. And when we open our dialog, we've got custom text, my no button, same stuff we had before because we moved it over into the new field, remember? And then we've got another cool button here. And this button, when we click it, it'll say confirm command execution. That'll just make sure that we know what we're doing, and it'll show us our command. If we click yes, you can see we get teleported all the way up, and our dialog is still open, which is kind of cool because then maybe you could have some more actions that you wanted the user to perform. And it's kind of nice that you can see what's going on behind this as you're executing these commands, because maybe a map maker could use this, or a data pack maker could use this to, for example, like an armor stand kind of mod, right? Instead of having sort of the written book that's typical, you could have one of these interfaces using real buttons. But then if we go ahead and hit back down here at the bottom, that'll close out of this dialog. We can see we'll fall down because we were teleported 15 blocks in the sky. That's pretty cool. Our next example is going to be really cool because we're going to implement multiple screens at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this one, okay? And I'm going to rename this to second dialog.json. And then I'll say my second dialog, and then maybe I'll say hello Mars. And that should be good enough to distinguish the two, okay? And what we're going to do is make one more called main dialog.json, okay? And here's a new one. We'll go ahead and remember the opening curly braces type, and we'll say Minecraft dialog list. And this one, again, we've got to supply a title. We'll name it my dialogs. And then we get this field called dialogs. And we get to define a list of all the dialogs we want to be included in this dialog list. So I'm going to say first dialog Actually, we have to say our namespace first, so test first dialog, and then we also want to include test second dialog. And if we save this, we've got our main dialog, our first dialog, and our second dialog here. So let's go ahead and go back to our game. Remember to save and reload. And inside our command block, we're still running our first dialog, but since we created a different one called main dialog, we'll go ahead and put that in our command block right here too. Okay, when we run it, ta-da! My dialogs, that's what we named it, remember? And we've got a button here that says my first dialog, my second dialog. We didn't have to define these buttons at all. We didn't have to manually input my first dialog into this button right here because it went ahead and grabbed the title from the dialog that we defined and put it in this button. And the most cool part about this is that when we click it, we see our first dialog that we created. It says hello world, custom text, blah, blah, blah. This one that teleports you to the very top of the world, right? Or not quite the top, but as you can see. And if you click the back button, it takes you all the way out. You don't actually get the opportunity to go back to your main menu screen right here. Just like on that one, if you click back, it takes you out. And the same thing if you press the escape key, it'll take you all the way out rather than taking you back to the last menu. This is a design choice. It may change in the future. Again, this is only the first snapshot, so take everything that I'm saying here with a grain of salt. It may change at any time in the future. So that's how you can go ahead and define this, and you can have as many of these as you want. So I'm actually going to go ahead and take some time to copy a few of these and create a few buttons here, and I'm going to show you another really cool thing you can do with this dialog list. Okay, welcome back. And as you can see, I've been adding some dialogs, and over here I've got 5 dialogs in total, including our first 2 that we created. So I've got 5th dialog all the way down to first dialog, as well as our main dialog that we also had. And inside of our main dialog, you can see I added the second dialog all the way through the 5th dialog right here. So that way, when we go into our main dialog, we can see all 5 options. So let's go ahead and go back into the game, and we'll reload. When we open up our dialog, we can see all 5 buttons right here. But what if we wanted to kind of compact them a little bit and we wanted them to take up less space and we wanted to maybe have more columns, right? Because right here we've got 1, 2 columns. Well, what if we wanted to increase the number of columns? Maybe we wanted 3 columns for our buttons. Well, let's go ahead and implement that. That's pretty simple. Back in VS Code in our main dialog right here, we've got our title, dialogs, we've got the columns key. And this is an integer right here. And I can just say, you know, because it defaults to 2, right? But if I made this 3, let's see what happens. We'll open up our dialog and ta-da, 1, 2, 3 columns. And it's really cool what it does at the end with all these extra buttons is it kind of overflows them in a neat way rather than kind of sticking them over to the side or something awkward. That's pretty nice. It also automatically sizes the buttons to fit. So that's also pretty nice. Let's do one more thing, and just for fun, because I want to see what happens, when we do 5 dialogs, let's save it, go out to the game, and now when we run it, 1, 2, 3, ooh, this is interesting, because it actually overflows. You know, I didn't expect that. I'm sure if you had a wider screen, you'd be able to see all of this. And, you know, maybe this gets fixed in a future version of Minecraft because, well, this shouldn't happen. You know, maybe there should be a max on the number of buttons you can have on a row. If this is going to happen, this is not, you know, the ideal user experience to have 2 buttons almost completely cut off. So regardless, this is what happens in the current state, and that's pretty cool to see. You know, half of this is just experimenting with what works, what doesn't, what you expect to happen, and maybe what actually happens. So I expected them to certainly be all lined up in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but that's not what happened. Now there is one thing we can do to potentially remedy this, and this leads nicely into the next topic, which is to add a custom name to these. So as you can see, there's not really anywhere to define a custom name. In our dialogues here, well, we had our label, it said actions, right? And then it had a label, a text, custom text, right? And that's how we define the text to go on a button. But back in our main dialog right here, we don't have any kind of, action or label to be seen. So how do we do this? Well, it turns out it's actually in these files right here. So in our first dialog, for example, or our second dialog, we can go ahead and change this thing. So there's an additional field here called external title. And this is what it shows whenever it's inside of a menu somewhere else as a button. So instead of saying my second dialog, I'll say D2, short for dialog 2, right? Make sure we add our comma. Valid JSON is always nice. And then I'm going to go ahead and go back to our game. Save and quit. And when we run this dialog, we'll see my first dialog, D2. Now that's interesting to see that it doesn't actually shrink down the button by having a smaller amount of text in the button. So, maybe for these menu item buttons, there is a limited size. But let's go in here, and I'm actually going to do one more thing related to these buttons, which is to shrink them down. So I'm going to go back to VS Code. I'm going to go to our second dialog here, and maybe we'll do this no button here. So it says my no button. We can enter another field called width. And again, we get an integer. I'm not really sure what scale this is on, but I'm going to try 20. That seems like a good number. It may be in pixels. So 20 pixels wide seems like a good value for a button. It says my no button. Dialog 2. My no button. That's really interesting. 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We could probably count this to 20 if we looked really closely. That's a pretty small button. I didn't think about that at the time, but it's a pretty small button. And I like how it sort of scrolls. And you see this in vanilla buttons in the options menu, which is nice. And so if you, get your button too small for the text, or if you end up using translatable text, which we won't cover in this video, but if you do use that and one language is a little bit longer than the rest, well, don't worry, because it'll go ahead and add this scrolling effect for you. So let's go ahead and change this button back to a more reasonable size. Maybe, maybe 100. I believe the default is 150. So I'm going to go back to Minecraft and back in the game. Dialog 2, my no button. You can see 100 pixels. It's about 2/3 the size of one of these others. That makes sense since we set it to 100 rather than 150. Now we're going to explore another side of dialogues, and that is forms. Forms are really, really powerful in this dialogue system. And to do this, we're going to go ahead. I've already set this to columns 3 just so we can see all our buttons. And I'm going to go ahead and define a new one, test form dialog. Okay, and we haven't defined this. See, it says we can't find it, but that's okay because we're about to define it. Let's create a new file called form dialog.json. And we'll go ahead and define it the same way we did the others, except we'll set the type Minecraft simple input form. We'll go ahead and give it a title of form dialog. First, we have body, which should be familiar to you because we've had it in all our other dialogues. Please fill out the form below. And that's because when we have inputs, we'll create a list and we'll say type text. And then we get to define a key. And we'll name this key my text input. You can have it as long or as short as you want, but this is a good name for this so we remember what it is. And this key, all that matters is that it's unique among all of your inputs. So you've got this input right here, and we'll add a few more, and we want the key to be different. That way, we can go ahead and do something with this later. So as long as the keys are different among all of them, it does not matter what they are. So now that we've got that defined, we can say name. Right here, we want the player to enter their name. The last thing we need is back in our main object, we need a field called action. Again, this is similar to what we did at the very first example with our action button, but this time we're going to give it a label of maybe submit. We're submitting our form, and we'll say on submit, and this will take a type, and we can choose what we want. For example, command template. And when we run this, maybe we say your name is, and I'll go ahead and finish this out. And then we're going to use this syntax right here, $, parentheses, and we're going to type the key that we used earlier, my text input. And we're going to close our parentheses. So it'll say your name is my text input, which is what we have defined right here. So now that we've got this defined, we can make sure that's correct. Go back to, actually we forgot one thing. Now I'm not sure exactly what this is, but I'm going to go ahead and put something here. Test say name. Go ahead and put a comma, and that should be good enough. I'm not exactly sure what this ID field does, but that should be good enough. As long as it's unique, you don't use test say name anywhere else in your data pack. And we should see our form dialog here, and we'll see name, and we can enter our name right here. Cool. If I click submit, it'll say you're trying to execute a command, and you can see the command already, and we'll see that it's correct. It says tell raw at a text your name is Cole. And if I click yes, you can see in chat it says your name is Cole. And that's pretty cool, because if I did it again and I said Jimmy, for example, and I clicked submit, it'll say text your name is Jimmy. Yes, your name is Jimmy. You know, that's pretty cool that we can have custom inputs that run custom commands just by having a data pack. Next, we're going to add another field to this form here, or another input rather. So let's go ahead and define this, and let's use a different type this time. We can go ahead and pick number range. Number range is pretty cool. Let's go ahead and give it a key. We're going to call it age, because this is going to let the user pick their age out of a range. So let's go ahead and say label age. And now we get to say start and end. And those define the start and end values of this slider here. So maybe start, nobody can be younger than 0. And end, well, we'll say nobody can be older than 100. So now that we've got that defined, now we'll define steps, which defines how many steps there are in the slider. So if we set steps to be, for example, 5, there would be 5 positions that the slider could be in on the form. So there might be 0, maybe 20, 40, and it'll spread them evenly, for example, throughout our range here that we've defined by start and end. So since we've got 100 different ages in our list, let's set our steps to 100 so that there's 100 different values the user could pick. And let's save that, and we should be all good to go back into our game. And inside our form dialog, you can see we're choosing our age. In fact, we've got a little bit of a bug here, as you can see. 7.0001, that's a little weird. I'm not sure what that's about. That might be a bug in Minecraft's code. But regardless, if we enter in our name and we slide this slider to the age we want, maybe we are 18 years old. I'll hit submit, and it'll, again, we can confirm. It says tell raw, but we click yes. It says your name is Cole and you're 18 years old. Again, let's try this again. We'll go Bill this time, and we'll say 63. Submit. Your name is Bill and you're 63 years old. Now I'm going to go over a few of the different types of inputs you can have. So let me add a new one called type of Boolean. And the Boolean type will be just a checkbox. And so we'll give it a key terms, maybe. And this is going to be if the user has read the terms and conditions. And let's say label, I have read the terms and conditions. And if the user has read the terms and conditions, they'll check this box. Key terms will be true, and you're 8 years old, blah, blah, blah. Let's go ahead and add a line break and say terms, and we'll go ahead and enter in terms. And this will print out that variable for us right here. And it turns out we can't use line breaks. So we'll just say terms. And so back in the game, we've got our form dialog. I've read the terms and conditions. If we check it, for example, submit, and it'll say, tell raw, your name is Cole and you're 30 years old. Terms, true. Now let's go ahead and click yes, and you can see, there you go. And now if we didn't check this, and we put in the same values, you can see terms false. That's a Boolean value, true or false. Another type of input we can use is the single option input. This is the last type that we have, and I'll name this pet because we're going to have the user select their favorite pet. With our label, we'll set this favorite pet, and we'll make the options a list of cat, dog, fish, and snake. And so in the game, when we go back, we'll see favorite pet, cat, dog, fish, snake. Cat, dog, fish, snake. And by clicking on this, you'll cycle through the different options. We forgot this time to go ahead and put our thing in our template here. And your blank years old will say your favorite pet is $, parentheses, pet. And now if we go back and try this again, we can see favorite pet dog, for example, Cole, age 43, read the terms and conditions, and we'll see your name is Cole, you're 43 years old, your favorite pet is dog, terms true. So as you can see, there's a lot of versatility in a form like this with all these different types of options here. You can let the user decide lots of different things, and there are so many possibilities for servers and map makers to create things with this system. Now, one thing I'm not going to go over in this video are the different types of action submits. So there are also, as you can see, there's command template, custom form, and custom template. The reason I'm not going to go over these is because they're highly technical and they have to do with custom servers and custom plugins for servers that can take advantage of these in a more raw way without having to utilize commands as a middleman. So they could, for example, with custom template, they could just send the data straight to the server so the server could process it, rather than having to put it into a command and then the server parse out that command on the other side. So that's all that is, but I'm not going to go over it in detail in this video. All you need to know is that that is possible and that there are options for map makers and server makers beyond just using the default built-in solution. However, I will go over another thing in this video, which is the multi-action input form. The multi-action input form is quite simple. It's the same as the simple input form, except you get to have multiple actions as seen in this actions key right here. And so you just take the current action that we have defined and we can move it into the actions key, and we can even define more actions. We could say ID test say age only, for example, label age only, and when we say on submit, a type of command template again, same thing as before, except this time we'll just say you are age years old. We've got this action that says say name, a little bit misleading because it's saying a lot more than just the name, but at first that's all it did. And then down here it says say age only, and we've got this. Each one of these represents a separate button at the bottom of the screen. So we've got the submit button, the default one, and then for the user we've got age only. Maybe they didn't want some sensitive information like their name to be submitted. They can just click age only. And so we'll give it a try and see exactly what that looks like. Form dialog, we've got submit, and we've got age only. So if I go ahead and click 65, no matter what I put into the name, read the terms and conditions, favorite pet, age only, it'll say text you are 65 years old. No matter what, it'll only say the age. And you could of course define that for any number of labels you want, any number of inputs you want here, any number of actions you want. And that's why this system is so versatile, because server makers, map makers can add whatever they want as much as they want. They can create these complex menu systems like the one we've got here. They could have links that go to other links that go to other links if they wanted. They could have links that go to forms. They could have forms that submit things and do all sorts of stuff. And all of this requires no download from the client. All the client has to do is log in to the server. That's why this is so neat. Now, I did save the best tip for last, because there is one thing you can add to the body element that will spice up your dialogues a lot. And that is the item body element. So in our form dialog here, let's go ahead and add one last element, type of item. And in there we'll say item, which will be an object with an ID, and we'll say Minecraft cobblestone. And here we've also got our components, which is to do with the component system, which we're not really going into in this video. All you need to know is that if you understand what that means, you are able to choose the components of your item. You can also choose the count of the item. So I'm going to say we've got 2 cobblestone in our stack here. So this item stack will appear below. Please fill out the form below in our form dialog. So let's check this out. Loading up our game here. We've got form dialog. Please fill out the form below, 2 cobblestone. As you can see, when you hover over it, it shows this. I've got my extended tooltips on, but if I were to turn that off, you can see it just says cobblestone by default. And that's pretty neat. I think this looks pretty clean in this form right here. Maybe you wanted to show some kind of illustration with an item or a block, and this is a great, clean way to do that. If you subscribe, you'll get access to all of the new videos I make about really interesting topics such as this one, and you'll be the first to know when my new videos come out. So thank you very much to all of those who subscribed, and I'll see you in the next one.